For 30 years, I was the perfect porcelain doll, placed carefully on a shelf, hair perfectly braided, eyes looking forward, smiling just enough. My purpose wasn't to live, it was to be seen, to be an example of goodness, a testament to my family's reputation in our small, devout community. But inside the porcelain, something was screaming. It was a silent, frantic sound that no one could hear. The price of being a good girl wasn't just my freedom, it was my soul. And I was beginning to realize that the shelf they'd placed me on was really a coffin.
That suffocating feeling of being trapped by the expectations of others is a reality for so many women. Today, we're honored to share the powerful story of Grace Henderson from Utah, a woman who had to shatter the perfect image she was raised to be in order to find the person she was born to become. I'm your host, Susan Bentley, and this is Unbroken Women.
My world was painted in muted colors: beige, cream, soft gray. My life followed a rhythm as predictable as the church bells on Sunday. Wake up, pray, help my mother, attend community gatherings, and prepare for my eventual marriage to David, a good, steady man chosen for me since we were teenagers. My long blonde hair was always in a single, neat braid down my back. It was practical, modest, and contained. Everything about me was contained. I was known as the Henderson girl. Quiet, respectful, dependable. The kind of girl other mothers pointed to as an example. And for a long time, I believed that was the highest compliment a woman could receive. There was a certain comfort in the rules, in knowing exactly what was expected of me every minute of every day. It was a life without sharp corners or sudden drops. But there was also a life without vibrant color, without spontaneous laughter, without the simple, terrifying joy of making a choice that was entirely my own. I had this secret, quiet dream of being a painter, of working with bold, messy, passionate colors. But in my world, a woman's hands were meant for baking bread and holding babies, not for wielding a paintbrush stained with crimson and cobalt blue. It was a silly, childish fantasy, I told myself, a distraction from my true purpose. The reputation I carried wasn't really mine. It was a fragile, priceless heirloom that belonged to my family, and I was just its curator. Every word I spoke, every step I took was measured against a single question: what will people think? This wasn't just about avoiding gossip. In our community, reputation was currency. It determined your standing, your opportunities, your worthiness. The pressure was a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety in the back of my mind. It felt like walking on a tightrope over a canyon, and everyone I knew and loved was watching from below, not to catch me, but to see if I would fall. I was always performing the role of good grace. My smile was a mask, my polite nods a script. Inside, I felt like I was shrinking, my true self curling into a smaller and smaller ball, until I was afraid it might just disappear entirely. The first crack was almost invisible. I was at the market and I saw a tourist, a woman about my age. She was wearing a bright yellow sundress, her hair was cut short and messy, and she was laughing, a loud, uninhibited sound that made heads turn. She wasn't looking for anyone's approval. She was just living. For a split second, I felt a pang of something so sharp and unfamiliar, it took my breath away. It wasn't envy, exactly. It was recognition. A glimpse of a feeling I didn't know I was missing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood in front of my mirror, and for the first time, I really looked at myself. I saw the tired blue eyes,
the polite, practiced smile, and a whisper, quiet as a prayer, surfaced from a place deep inside me. "Who are you?" It terrified me, so I pushed it down, burying it under layers of scripture and duty. But the seed was planted. A tiny, nagging question that began to grow in the dark. Was this life, this perfect, predictable, muted life, really living at all?
The illusion of safety shattered one Sunday afternoon. My friend Sarah had always been a little more spirited than the rest of us. Nothing major. She wore her headscarf a little looser. Her laugh was a little louder. That week, she'd been seen having coffee with a cousin who had left the community years ago. It was a minor transgression, an act of familial loyalty, but it was enough. After the service, Elder Thompson called her to the front. The entire congregation was there. My fiancé, David's hand tightened on mine. The air grew thick and cold. The elder spoke of purity, of loyalty, of the dangers of outside influence. He didn't use Sarah's name, but every eye was on her. He spoke of her as a weak link, a potential source of spiritual sickness. I watched the color drain from her face. I saw her parents shrink in their pews, their faces a mask of shame. She stood there, alone, as hundreds of eyes, the eyes of her friends, her neighbors, her family, judged her. She was publicly dismantled, her character shredded, her place in our world revoked in a matter of minutes. She wasn't just corrected, she was erased. As people filed out, no one looked at her. No one spoke to her. She was a ghost. In that moment, I didn't see Sarah. I saw myself. I saw the terrifying truth of our world. It wasn't a sanctuary. It was a cage with invisible bars, and the punishment for rattling them was a fate worse than death. It was social annihilation. The tightrope I'd been walking my whole life suddenly felt 1,000 feet higher. My first instinct was to run from the truth. I told myself that Sarah knew the rules. She had been careless. This was the consequence. The system worked. It had to work. If I believed that, I could believe I was safe. So I tried harder. My braid became tighter, my smile more fixed, my prayers longer. I volunteered for every committee, baked extra loaves of bread for the bake sale, and agreed with everything David said, even when a voice inside me screamed in protest. I was trying to armor myself with perfection. If I was flawless, they couldn't touch me. But the fear was a poison. It seeped into my sleep, giving me nightmares of standing where Sarah stood, my own parents looking away in shame. During the day, my hands would tremble so badly, I had to hide them in my lap. My heart would pound in my chest for no reason, a frantic bird beating against my ribs. I was terrified of making a mistake, of a stray thought, an unguarded expression. The weight of being the good girl was no longer a gentle pressure. It was a crushing, suffocating force. I wasn't just afraid of being cast out. I was afraid of the part of me that watched Sarah and thought, for one terrifying second, good for her. The breaking point came a few days later. I was in my bedroom, folding laundry, the same muted colors, the same modest fabrics. My reflection in the window showed a pale, hollow-eyed stranger. And then I saw it again in my mind's eye. Sarah's face. The shock, the hurt, and then the terrifying emptiness as she accepted her fate. I saw my own future in her eyes. A lifetime of walking on eggshells, a lifetime of shrinking and silencing myself until there was nothing left but an obedient shell. Suddenly,
I couldn't breathe. A wave of something, rage, grief, terror, crashed over me, so powerful it buckled my knees. I slid down the wall to the floor, wrapping my arms around myself. There were no tears, just a deep guttural sob that was torn from my soul, a sound I didn't know I was capable of making. It was the sound of 30 years of repression breaking open. In that moment, lying on my bedroom floor, I understood with absolute clarity. I had two choices. I could die this slow death of the spirit, becoming a ghost in my own life, or I could risk everything. My family, my fiancé, my home, my salvation, for the chance to simply breathe. The fear of being cast out was immense, but for the first time, the fear of staying was greater. I got up off the floor, my body trembling, but my mind strangely calm. The choice was made. It wasn't a grand plan for a new life. It was smaller, more immediate. It was a decision to perform one single authentic act. The upcoming Founders Day picnic was the biggest social event of the year. Everyone would be there. For years, I had secretly sketched designs for dresses in a hidden notebook, dresses with flowing skirts and vibrant colors. There was one, a simple dress the color of a summer sky, modest by any other standard, but in my world, the color alone was an act of defiance. It was too bright, too joyful, too individual. I decided I was going to make that dress, and I was going to wear it. It felt like declaring war. I knew what it would mean. I knew the whispers, the judgment, the condemnation that would follow. But it was the only way to know if the person inside me was real. The day of the picnic, the blue dress felt like it was humming against my skin. When I walked out of my room, my mother gasped. She didn't have to say a word. Her face said it all. Disappointment, fear, betrayal. My father just looked away. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. Walking into that park was the hardest thing I have ever done. The moment I stepped onto the grass, a wave of silence rolled through the crowd. The chatter stopped. Every head turned. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. Not with admiration, but with cold, calculating judgment. It was exactly as I had feared. It was a physical force pushing me down, trying to make me run and hide. But then, something else happened. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't just the Henderson girl. I was me. Underneath the terror was a spark of exhilarating, breathtaking defiance. I was terrified, but I was also finally alive. The consequences were immediate and brutal. That evening, Elder Thompson and 2 other community leaders came to our house. They sat in our living room, their faces grim, and spoke to my father as if I wasn't even there. They talked about my spirit of rebellion, my prideful display, and the shame I had brought upon the Henderson name. My father, a man I adored, just nodded and apologized for my behavior. He couldn't even look at me. The next day, the shunning began. Old friends would cross the street to avoid me. The women in my mother's prayer circle offered her their sympathy for having such a willful daughter. But the cruelest cut came from David. He met me by the river, his face tight with anger. He told me he couldn't marry a woman who courted attention, who put her own selfish desires above the peace of the community. He said the woman he loved would never have done what I did. He took the simple ring from my finger and told me it was over. I stood there, long after he left, feeling the cold indent on my skin where the ring used to be. I had known there would be a price. I just hadn't understood how completely it would isolate me, how it would feel to have your entire world turn its back on you at once. The loneliness was a physical ache. At night, my room felt like a prison cell. The silence was deafening, filled only with the echoes of everything I had been taught my whole life. You are selfish. You are prideful. You are on the path to damnation. The guilt was a suffocating blanket. I saw the pain in my mother's eyes every day, and it felt like a knife in my heart. I had blown up my life, and my family's life. For what? For a blue dress? Some nights, I missed the comfort of my cage. I missed the easy belonging, the simple approval. I missed David. I would lie awake, my mind racing, wondering if I had made a catastrophic, irreversible mistake. It would be so easy to go back, to apologize, to put on the gray dress and braid my hair and promise to be good again. The temptation to surrender was overwhelming. My lowest point came about a month later. My father's small business began to suffer. People in the community, our friends for decades, were taking their business elsewhere. One afternoon, I came home to find my mother sitting at the kitchen table, just silently weeping. The public shaming of our family was complete. The sight of her broke me. The weight of what I had done, the pain I had caused the people I loved most, became unbearable. I felt like a monster. That night, I decided to end it. I put on my plainest dress, pulled my hair back, and walked to Elder Thompson's house. I was going to beg. I was going to renounce my actions, ask for forgiveness, promise to do anything they asked if they would just let my family back in. I stood on his doorstep in the dark, my hand raised to knock, tears streaming down my face. I was completely defeated, utterly broken, ready to give up the last shred of myself to stop the pain. As my knuckles were about to touch the wood, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a number I didn't recognize. A simple text message. It read, "I heard what happened. They cast me out 5 years ago for loving the wrong person. It was hell, but I survived. You are braver than you know. Don't let them extinguish your light." It was signed, "A Friend." It had to be from Sarah's cousin, the one she'd had coffee with, someone who had walked this path and come out the other side. This small message from a stranger who understood was a lifeline. It wasn't a rescue, but it was a flicker of light in the absolute darkness. It reminded me that my crime wasn't pride. It was authenticity. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't a sin. I lowered my hand from the door, turned around, and walked back home. The war wasn't over, but I hadn't lost. The climb was slow and unsteady. I got a job at a bookstore in the next town over. At first, I was terrified, but the simple act of talking to people who knew nothing about my past was liberating. I started taking a community college art class at night. The first time I smeared bright red paint on a canvas, my hands shook, but it felt like I was finally speaking a language that was my own. I found a small apartment, a tiny space that was entirely mine. I set boundaries with my parents. I told them I loved them, that I would always be their daughter, but I would not live by their rules anymore. Our conversations were strained and painful, but they were honest. I started to build a new community, a handful of friends from my class and my job. They weren't bound by doctrine, but by mutual respect. They didn't care about my reputation. They cared about me. Each small step was an act of rebuilding not just a life, but a self. One day, about a year later, I was walking downtown and saw some people from my old community. The old me would have ducked her head and hurried past, stomach churning with shame. But this time, I just smiled a small, genuine smile and kept walking. Their judgment no longer had any power over me. I realized I hadn't lost my faith. I had lost my religion. I found a new kind of spirituality, one that existed in a sunset, in the kindness of a friend, in the vibrant colors on my canvas. I was no longer a porcelain doll. I was flesh and blood, with scars and flaws, and a spirit that was, finally, my own. My peace no longer depended on their approval. It came from within.
If I could speak to that girl with the perfect braid and the fearful eyes, I would wrap my arms around her. I would tell her, I know you're scared. I know you think goodness is found in obedience, in being small and quiet, but your peace is not found in outward perfection, but in the courage to be authentically you. Your true home is not a place where you have to shrink to fit. It's the place where your spirit can finally breathe. It's worth the fight. You are worth the fight.
Thank you, Grace, for sharing your incredibly courageous journey with us. What a powerful reminder that our true strength is often forged in the fires of judgment. If Grace's story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means the world to our community. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Unbroken Women, and click here to watch another story of a woman who found her voice against all odds.